Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're going to be looking at a pretty interesting Warriors win. They beat the Thunder, but it wasn't like your typical Curry kind of just going off explosion type of night. I got a post-game analysis here that you sent over that really digs into all the individual performances for Golden State,
Yeah.
and I think it'll be fun to kind of just unpack this together.
Yeah. Everybody's talking about Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's huge game. Like, he had 52 points for the Thunder, but they still lost. Warriors won 116 to 109. And it wasn't even like a blowout or anything. The Thunder were actually ahead at halftime.
Yeah, that's interesting. Makes
Hmm.
you wonder if there's like a deeper story there,
Yeah.
Because I feel like you see a score like that and you assume SGA just totally dominated.
Right.
But the fact that the Warriors still won and were behind at half
Yeah.
is like, okay, there's got to be something more to it.
Totally. And that's where this article gets really interesting because while Curry had a decent game, he had 21 points. He actually wasn't even the top scorer for the Warriors. Andrew Wiggins led the way with 27.
Wiggins leading, huh? Okay, now I'm intrigued. And you said Curry even had an off-shooting night, only hit 6 out of 15. So how did they pull this off? Was it like a total team effort? Or did some like unsung heroes really step up big time?
I think a little bit of both. The article highlights Kevon Looney coming off the bench had a huge impact. He had 18 points, incredible shooting, and he even had 4 blocks.
Wow, 4 blocks from Looney.
Yeah.
I gotta say, he's not exactly known for being like a defensive powerhouse. Like that's a side of his game I haven't really seen much. You think this was just a fluke, or could this be a sign of him kind of taking on a bigger role defensively?
It's definitely worth keeping an eye on. He's always been a solid player, but he often flies under the radar a little bit. So maybe this is a sign of him kind of expanding his game even more.
Right.
And then you have Gary Payton II. He had a super well-rounded performance, 15 points, 9 rebounds, 3 assists, like a little bit of everything.
I mean, you gotta love a player who can contribute across the board like that. Those guys might not always grab the headlines, but they're often the ones who can really swing a game. Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of grabbing headlines, though, the article actually gives letter grades to each player, which is always fun. And Wiggins and Looney snagged the top spot with a B-plus hole. Meanwhile, Curry, with his 21 points, actually received a B.
Interesting.
A B for Curry. You don't see that every day. I guess it shows how crucial Wiggins and Looney were to this specific win. But what about everyone else? Did anyone just totally bomb?
No, not really. The lowest grade went to Quinton Post,
Yeah.
but he only played 8 minutes, so it's hard to judge, really.
Right, yeah, true. So we've talked about some of the individual performances there, but what does all this mean for the Warriors as a team? How do they overcome Curry having an off night and then SGA just going off like that for 52 points and still secure the win?
Well, I think the article kind of hints at this, but the key takeaway here is depth. The Warriors have built a team where they're not solely reliant on Curry to carry them every single night. They've got a roster full of players who can step up and contribute when needed.
It's funny because you almost forget about that with them sometimes. We're so used to Curry just being the main story. But this game really highlights how well-rounded the Warriors are as a unit.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not just about having other players who can score. The Warriors have really focused on building a team with a variety of skill sets. Guys like Looney, Payton, Wiggins, they each
Gotcha.
excel in different areas, and it all comes together really beautifully.
So it's not just about talent, but it's also about how all those pieces fit together.
Yeah.
It's something that any team, any field can learn from. You need that strategic vision to build a team where everyone's strengths complement each other.
For sure.
But let's not forget about the Thunder, though. I mean, SGA drops 52 points, and they still lose. Like, that's got to be a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah.
Is it just a case of one incredible player not being enough?
That's what makes this so fascinating to me, right? On one hand, you have SGA having this historic night, but on the other, it just shows that individual brilliance, while obviously super impressive, isn't always enough to win games in the NBA.
Yeah. And that brings us back to the Warriors' depth, right? I mean, even with SGA going crazy like he was, they were still able to hold the Thunder to 109 points. Their defense was clearly a big factor in this win as well.
Definitely. It's easy to get caught up in the offensive spectacle, but you're right, defense is crucial.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the real takeaway here is the Warriors' ability to execute their game plan on both ends of the court, even when they're facing an offensive juggernaut like SGA.
That's a really good point. And it kind of speaks to their experience, too, and their championship mentality. They didn't panic when SGA was scoring at will. They stuck to the game plan, made adjustments, and found a way to win.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, I want to touch on a few other players that the article mentions. Brandin Podziemski, Dennis Schroeder, and Guy Santos all received a C+ command. Not spectacular, but not terrible either. What are your thoughts on their performances?
Well, I mean, a C+ in this context, I think, suggests that they had a decent game, but nothing that, like, really moved the needle.
Yeah, right. It's all relevant.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. Podziemski showed some flashes of his potential, but he's still young and developing. Schroeder was solid, but unspectacular. And Santos made some contributions on the boards, but didn't really stand out otherwise.
Makes sense. What about the players who received lower grades then? Kyle Anderson and Moses Moody got a C. Buddy Hield also got a C. And then there's poor Quentin Post with an NA. Any thoughts on them?
Well, it's tough to judge Post based on, like, only 8 minutes of playing time, but I'd say that Anderson and Moody both struggled to find their rhythm offensively. Anderson just couldn't get his shots to fall, and Moody had a rough night from beyond the arc.
Yeah, sometimes it's just not your night. But did they contribute in other ways at all?
They did. Even though their scoring was off DMP, they both made contributions in other areas. Anderson was active defensively, and Moody grabbed a couple of offensive rebounds.
So even when a player isn't having their best shooting night, there are still ways to contribute and have a positive impact on the game. And speaking of impact, let's talk about the Thunder's future for a second. They might have lost, but they have a young, exciting team with a ton of potential.
Yep.
What do you see in them?
Well, SGA is obviously like a superstar in the making, right? He's already carrying the team on his back, and he's only going to get better.
He's so incredible to watch. His ability to create his own shot is just unreal.
Right.
But what about the players around him? Who else on the Thunder stands out to you?
I think Josh Giddey is a really interesting prospect. He's a tall guard with incredible passing vision. He's still working on his scoring consistency, but he has all the tools to be a triple-double machine.
Yeah, I can totally see that. And then they've got Dort, who's already a lockdown defender. If he can develop a more consistent offensive game, he could be a real two-way threat.
For sure.
So they have some exciting pieces for sure. But what are their weaknesses? What do they need to improve on to kind of take that next step?
Well, experience is definitely a factor. They're a young team, and they're still learning how to win consistently in the NBA. And they need to improve their three-point shooting as a team. They're not a great shooting team right now, and that can hurt them against teams that can stretch the floor.
Yeah, for sure. And they're also still waiting for Chet Holmgren to come back from his injury. He has the potential to be a game changer for them, but he's been out all season.
Right. His return will be huge for them. He's a shot blocker, a rim protector, and he can stretch the floor with his shooting. He adds a whole other dimension to their game.
So all things considered then, are the Thunder contenders pretenders or somewhere in between?
I think they're a team on the rise. They're not quite ready to compete for a championship yet, but they have the talent and the potential to be a playoff team in the near future.
Especially once Holmgren's back in the mix. It's going to be interesting to see how they develop over the next few years.
Yeah, it always is. Young teams with a lot of potential are so much fun to watch. It keeps the league exciting and unpredictable.
Okay, so we've talked about the Warriors' depth, the Thunder's potential, and the fact that even a 52-point performance isn't always enough to guarantee a win. But there's one more thing I wanted to touch on before we wrap up.
Okay, I'm listening.
We talked a lot about the players and all, but I think it's worth acknowledging the coaching aspect of this game, too.
Yeah.
I mean, after all, it's the coach who sets the tone, creates the strategy and puts the players in the best position to succeed.
Yeah, for sure. And I think Steve Kerr deserves a lot of credit for how the Warriors responded in this game. They were down at halftime. Curry wasn't shooting well, but he made some key adjustments that helped them turn things around.
What kind of adjustments did he make? Do you think he shifted the offensive focus away from Curry, given that he was having an off night?
Oh, absolutely. The article doesn't go into specifics, but you can definitely see it in the box score. Other players like Wiggins and Looney really stepped up offensively. It seems like Kerr recognized that Curry wasn't having his best game, and so he emphasized ball movement and getting other players involved.
Smart. And it worked. It's a testament to his coaching ability. And the team's willingness to adapt, too. They didn't force things through Curry. They trusted the system and each other.
Exactly.
And let's not forget, Kerr has also done a fantastic job of developing the Warriors' young players. Guys like Podziemski, Moody, Santos. They're all getting valuable minutes and contributing to the team's success.
You're right.
That's a sign of a great coach, in my opinion. Someone who can balance winning now with developing talent for the future. It creates a culture of sustainable success.
Yeah, I agree. And on the flip side, thinks about the Thunder. Even though they lost, they still gained valuable experience from playing against a championship-caliber team like the Warriors.
You know what they say, sometimes you learn more from a loss than a win.
Exactly. They got to see firsthand what it takes to compete at the highest level.
Yeah.
And they can use that experience to grow and improve.
Plus, they have a coach in Mark Dario who is really known for player development. So this game was probably a great learning opportunity for him and the young Thunder squad. They can analyze what worked, what didn't, and make adjustments going forward.
For sure. And who knows, maybe this loss will be the spark they need to take that next step. It could fuel their fire and push them to work even harder.
I love that perspective. It's a reminder that even in defeat, there's always something to be gained.
Absolutely. Every game is a new chapter, a new opportunity to learn and grow.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, from the Warriors' impressive depth and coaching to SGA's incredible performance and the Thunder's potential. What are you walking away with from this analysis?
For me, the biggest takeaway is the importance of a well-rounded team. You can have superstars, but you need role players who can step up when called upon. And you need a coaching staff that can adapt to any situation.
That's a great point. It's a reminder that success in any field, not just basketball, is rarely about individual brilliance alone. It's about teamwork strategy and the ability to adapt and overcome challenges.
Yeah. And for our listeners out there, I hope this deep dive sparked some ideas about the teams in their own life, whether it's at work in their personal life or even just in their own personal growth.
Yeah, think about it. Are there any unsung heroes who deserve more recognition? Are there strategies you could implement to bring out the best in your team?
And remember, even when things don't go your way, there's always something to be learned. Every setback is an opportunity for growth.
Well said. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive. We'll be back soon with more insightful analysis and thought-provoking discussions. Until then, keep diving deep.